Someone wrote in and asked, what's the relationship between what I call the, quote, restful states and the traditional practices that are known as shamatha or jhanas or absorption practices? Well, the relationship is pretty simple. The restful states are my reworking of the absorption practice of early Buddhism. By reworking, I mean I've taken some of the principles involved in that, not all of them, and put them into a completely modern type of vocabulary and formulated them as a procedure. I technically refer to that procedure as focus on rest. I have people work with 6 distinct flavors of restful experience. That way, the experience of restfulness or tranquility, shamatha, by the way, means tranquilizing. It's from the same root as shanti, that means peace. I like to make the experience of the tranquilizing or tranquility aspect of the practice to be tangible and sensory. I always like to work with tangible sensory flavors that have locations in space and durations through time, so that the practice is always based in just sensory experience. I distinguish 6 flavors of restfulness that I have people work with. One is physical relaxation of the body, which I call relaxed or relaxation. Another one is what happens when you intentionally defocus your eyes. Your eyes are open, but you're just sort of letting light in. This is used in East Asian martial arts, where it's called far mountain gazing. It's also in shamanic cultures among native people, it's sometimes called spirit eyes. And it's a restful experience that, of the external world of sight. You're not fixated on objects, you're just sort of letting light in. And it turns out, actually, you can process visual information better in that state than in the sort of fixated gaze on this or that. And that was actually used by some samurai. They would put their life at risk. They would defocus their eyes when faced with an enemy, if you can believe that, with a live blade, because they found that they could respond more quickly in that unfixated visual state. So I call that light, because you're just letting light in, and I count that as one of the restful states. Then you listen to the absence of sound in different directions. The absence of sound, or you sort of defocus your ears into with regards to physical sound. So that gives you a way of having a tranquil experience of the objective world. The body physically relaxes, the eyes defocus, the ears defocus. So you have relaxation, light, silence. Then you can find some restful states within your subjective world. For example, at any given instant, you may or may not have internal talk going on. Now, I know you might think it's always there, but it's not necessarily always there. And there are even ways that you can sort of turn it off without fighting yourself. In general, we don't want you to fight with yourself. But there are ways of finding quiet in your head where talk normally occurs. And it could happen that there's no emotions in your body. I call an absence of emotion in the body. You could have pain in the body without having emotion in the body, for example. But the emotion is things like anger, fear, sadness, joy, interest, smile, that kind of thing, those flavors. So a conscious awareness of an absence of emotional sensation in the body is an awareness of a presence of emotional peace. So I call that restful flavor of peace. And that takes care of sort of the affective side, the emotional side of subjective experience. Then we have, of course, thought. Well, part of thought is internal talk, so if you experience quiet, that's a restful state for in talk space. Then you could look into your image space. Image space means where you see mental pictures. You could look into image space, but not at any images, or maybe there wouldn't be any images. There's just blank. So we'll call that blank. So a restful state in the visual part of thought I call blank, a restful state in the auditory part of thought I call quiet, and a restful state in the emotional body I call peace. And that then gives you 6 really delicious and distinctive flavors of tranquility: relaxation, light, silence, peace, blank, quiet. So I have people work with those and to note them, to create them and note them. And that's sort of, that will then take you deeper and deeper and deeper into states of high concentration and restfulness. Shamatha is interesting because it means, the shama part means tranquil, but the ta is sometimes taken to mean abiding. In fact, in Tibetan it's called shi ne. Shi means tranquil and ne means abiding. Now, so the ne part is high concentration, one-pointedness, and the shi part is this sort of restful or tranquilizing. Well, there's a relationship. The way I interpret the, at least part, not all, but part of the traditional jhana system is that it's a biofeedback device. You produce pleasant experiences. The more you focus on those pleasant experiences, the more pleasant they become, encouraging you to focus even more, thus creating a positive feedback loop that revs up your concentration power and also takes you into deeper and deeper states of tranquility, and hence the shamatha, or the tranquil but also developed concentration. The ta part is the high focus. That's my reworking of part of the classical system. And if you look at how the classical system of the absorptions is described, for example, in the Digha Nikaya, you'll see that what the Buddha describes over and over again is going into these tranquil states and then seeing beyond them to something, to an absolute rest called nirvana, or nirodha, meaning cessation, that is not a pleasant, tranquil experience. It's something beyond that, beyond time and space. But one of the classical ways to get there is to go into these tranquil states and then see beyond them until they are penetrated and dissolve into the absolute rest of the source. By making them sensory experiences, you can then observe their impermanence, eventually get to their emptiness, and then that becomes a path to classical enlightenment.